Morning, everyone. Morning. Rather evening hour. You greeted me already, but it's just so wonderful to have you. I don't know how you folk feel, but we started getting back to in-person events earlier this year, and I'm just super excited to have people in the room again and just watching the interaction, the human interaction with people just shows what we missed during the last 2 years. So it's so wonderful to have you all here today. I'm going to be your program director. Just some housekeeping rules. To the left, next to the reception area, is the important room. I'm sure there wasn't enough time, but you'll need them again. But it's just wonderful to have you all here. It's appropriate at this stage just to welcome our acting High Commissioner. We assumed office at 12 o'clock, 11:59. You assumed office for the next 2 weeks. It's really, I know you've been traveling hectically, and it's just wonderful that you made the time to be here today. It just demonstrates once again the level of collaboration between the Chamber and the High Commission of Canada in South Africa. Thank you. Thank you. It would be remiss of me not to just acknowledge the bright executive who are hosting us today. So thank you very much, Edwin, to you and your team, for being here and also making your facilities available for us. Without any further ado, let me tell you that there will be a recording. I purposely don't announce the recording, that cuts numbers back, but we will make it available, Greg. 2 days, 48 hours. About 48 hours. We have the videographer there, and we will make it available together with the recording, which is a first for us, not a first, second. Yeah, we had one last week and it worked well. So without any further ado, I'd like to ask Edwin O'Neill, the Group CEO of Bright Africa Group, just to welcome you officially on behalf of Bright.
So much, Mike, and a special welcome to all of you attending today's session. It's really great to have you in the CBD. Not many events happen in the CBD, but welcome to our wonderful space at Bright. It's really cool to see each and every one of you join us. We're a proud member of the Southern African Canadian Chamber with wonderful shareholders, giving back to the communities that we serve, and we're doing so with excellence at the moment in KZN. And so for some of you that are not fully aware, it will be the largest loss event for the insurance industry in the country's history. Some 30 billion rand will be going back into KZN through losses that occur, and we're part of that. So we're proudly giving back. So we won't talk about our bonuses or the profits that they're getting right now. So a really special welcome to you all. I'm going to hand over right now to Greg, who will introduce our speaker. So Greg, our chairman of the Southern African Canadian Chamber. Please welcome. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much, Edwin. My name is Greg Notch, and I'm the chairperson of the Southern African Canadian Chamber of Commerce. I always somehow tongue twist that, but anyway, I'm the chairperson. And it's lovely to have you all here, as Edwin says, in the CBD, and thanks once again, Edwin, for hosting. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Cas, and in introducing Cas, it's nice to know, in doing so, that I've actually known Cas for over 30 years, from the troublesome 80s. I say troublesome now, I'm talking about the troubles in Northern Ireland. But since the 80s of his activism, and to be able to talk of his integrity and authenticity as a human being, and for him to now lead the business unity of South Africa is phenomenal. So it's lovely to be able to introduce you, Cas. If I may just read a short CV out to you to welcome you. Cas is the CEO of Business Unity South Africa and the former MD of the Banking Association of Southern Africa. He's the current chairperson of the National Business Initiative and serves on several boards, such as the Centre for Development and Enterprise and the Nepad Business Foundation, which I'm a colleague of his on. He is the past president of the International Banking Federation, and he serves on the Council of the University of Witwatersrand, as well as the steering committee of the CEO Initiative. Cas obtained his BCom from the University College Durban and furthered his studies in housing finance with the Wharton Real Estate Centre at the University of Pennsylvania. As I say, we've heard all of that about Cas, but the biggest thing we've heard is your integrity, Cas, as a business leader, as a leader in our society. And we thank you for all the effort that you put in creating a better South Africa. Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks, Greg, and don't mind if I stand. Okay, so you've asked me to speak on how I see business health South Africa. It's an extremely difficult and complex topic. Given what's happening in the country, given some of the engagements we are trying to have with government, and the frustrations of those engagements, to be better, which I'll talk to. But what I'd like to do is just perhaps firstly talk about the BUSA, the opportunities in the country, because they are opportunities. Yeah. And whenever I engage with government, particularly when some minister calls me and asks me why I said something in public that was critical about, I usually tell them I did that because I'm a patriot. Because I shudder at the opportunities we are losing in the country. And I think that everything we're doing, quite honestly, is to actually capitalize on the opportunities we have and leverage those. And we need to do a few little things, and I think that we can see the difference. So what do we have? We can debate whether the Nigerian economy or the South African economy is bigger, it doesn't matter. But we have the most diversified economy of the country. And as Father and Becky used to say, there's two economies, and I guess it's correct. But the formal economy is comparable, it's small, but it's in its diversity, in its sophistication, in the sorts of business and firms it has, it's comparable to many in the world. And that's why I guess a lot of users. So we have a diversified economy with a potential to actually grow exponentially if we get things right. We geographically very far from most places, but we have the advantage of most people speaking the English language and the knowledge of that. We have sophisticated and globally connected businesses in many sectors of the economy. We have a financial sector that is comparable to any in the world. When I was at the Banking Association chairing the International Banking Federation for 2 years, we were the Banking Association of South Africa was the only, I think still is, the only African member of the International Banking Federation, because we're the only system, banking and financial system that qualified to be a member. And we sat around the table with America, Britain, Canada, and others. And I could hold my head up high and say that we, compared to any of those, very favorable. We still have a depth of minerals and resources in the country, including minerals that we need for a new type of economy. And we still have those under the ground. We have amazing potential in agriculture and food security. And again, we have an agricultural community that's actually adopting to new practices and doing really well and could do much better. And to a certain extent, I guess we still remain a gateway to Africa, although we were just having a chat earlier, that to a great extent, we're actually losing the leverage we had on the country. We actually lagging behind. But these are just examples of some of the opportunities in the country at the time we have. And to me, the situation we find ourselves in currently, the irritation with that is that we do a few things right and we could actually, all of those could, just from opportunities, actually translate into utilizing all of these to grow this economy phenomenally. So what's the current context? I thought I should just speak about the current context before I speak about the role of business. We have the Zuma years that undoubtedly caused a phenomenal amount of damage. The destruction to institutions, the loss of good capacity and resource because people just didn't want to work there. The infiltration of those institutions by people were only one thing on the agenda, and that was to loot and to it didn't matter what the impact on the economy of people of South Africa was. And we still have semblances of that today. So if you look at Eskom, speaking to Andre at Eskom, and it's now public discourse, I guess, sabotage that's what happened. It's severe. It's a war zone. And those are remnants of the past regime that are still benefiting from the nefarious activities. And one of the things we've been telling the president and government, and I think he's acknowledging it now, we're sending a track team there to unearth these people and bring them to book, because Eskom management can't do that. So the remnants of that are still there, not only in Eskom, but in many parts of the country and in many parts of government. And it's going to take us a long time to actually get rid of it. Having said that, I think President Ramaphosa has succeeded in beginning to rebuild some of the institutions. If you look at SARS, Hawks, SIU, and others, the National Prosecuting Authority, beginning to rebuild them, but they're nowhere near as efficient as they should be. And again, because there's a reluctance on the part of good people to actually work. That's the first part. The second part is because of the Zuma years as well as what's happening today. We're losing good people to other countries. So we in the current context in rebuilding, we have significant capacity and resource challenges. Then I'm increasingly of the view that what the current context is showing is that we don't have an economic problem in this country, we have a political. And we have a political problem because of the dominance of the ANC, the relationship between the ANC and some labor movements, and the impact of the factionalism and essentially the destruction of the ANC party on government. So we were talking just now about the ANC deployment policy and so on, and the impact it's having on capacity in government. The president looks over every shoulder before he takes a decision because of the political dynamics in the ANC. And then just totally immobilized government. And we see that all the time. So that context at the moment creates all sorts of delay, just spins wheels, kicks cans down the road instead of actually taking decisions. So if we compare what's happening, the way President Ramaphosa is managing cabinet and government at the moment, to the way Thabo Mbeki is. I mean, I had serious differences with Thabo on some of his policies, like AIDS and Zimbabwe. But when we used to meet him, firstly, he used to do the work. He would say, from our last meeting on page so and so of the minute, paragraph so and so, subparagraph so and so, this is what we agree. Have we done? And then he'll consult and he'll talk. But after that, he'll say, right, I've spoken to all you guys, I've spoken to labor, I've spoken to business. This is what we're going to do. And we may, as business, not have liked every decision he took, but there was certainty and we could work with it. And it was fine. And the country grew, we created employment, and so on. It's not happening now. The other serious issue, and again, as a result of the Zuma years and people not having the confidence to work in government, is that the capacity of the state is pretty bad. And we see that all over the shop. We see that in the way cities are run. We see that in the way decisions are taken. We see that in the way, the state-owned institutions are run and so on. The president's office itself is very weak advisors who really don't understand the issues. And so that capacity is extremely. And because of the president's sort of style of leadership, which is, consult and play the long game and so on, which was good as a union leader, but not as president of the country. We increasingly finding that decision making doesn't happen. And the impact of that is that we just keep on talking about things we should not be talking about. We keep on talking about things in broad multilateral forums instead of knocking heads with each other bilaterally. And nothing happens. So an example is at NetLab. We had in the midst of COVID, 2020, July 2020, we had presented a plan and post-COVID economic recovery strategy to do that. And we had done a deep dive into about 49 sectors. And we had arrived at 11 sectors that we thought, based on data and research, had the least difficulty of recovering after COVID. And that we should concentrate on those. We should not just rebuild the economy, but repurpose the economy as an inclusive economy. And we gave him massive document. And we suggested that government and ourselves work on unpacking. Instead of doing that, government announces an economic recovery strategy. It's not based on much data, and he decides that we will engage at NetLab on that. So it was labor, it was community groups, government, and business. And 4 years later, we've got nothing coming up. And we at BUSA have in fact taken the decision now that if government insists that the only platform for engaging is through NetLab or other multilateral platforms, we are going to say no. Until government engages with us bilaterally on the significant issue of investment and growth, we're going to say we will not waste any more time in multilateral wisdom. It's been a hard decision to take, but we've been absolutely clear about it. So the current context is, we met with the president on the 28th of January, I think, or before his sona. And we actually put this 100-day thing here now at the sona on the table. But we did it, but we told him, here's the deal. Work with us bilaterally. And we had identified and gotten sort of commitment from key business leaders, and that's come to the business role. That's one of the roles that business has been playing and can play. So we identified investment and growth, infrastructure, law and order, some of the network industry like water and communication, as the key areas of priority. And we had identified 3 or 4 actionable items under each of them that we thought would make a significant difference. And we have started speaking to business leaders to say, so on investment and growth, let's go to the Lungisa and Standard Bank and Neil Kahneman, Spania, and as a guys, will you head this up? Just short. On communications, spoke to people Moseko, CEO at Telkom, will you head this up? Sure. Water, Mike Mother, who used to be the director general of water, sure. law and order, I approached BUSA Pitoli, who was the what was it? Yeah. He said, sure. Yeah. And we had lined up people to actually work on this. And we told the president, we've lined up people. Give us 4 people to work with. Let's pull this together. Let's work together. We're putting the resources and capacity in a bilateral process. And in 100 days, we'll give you an implementable plan that you can then implement. And they actually agreed. They gave us 4 ministers to work. And then in his sauna, he doesn't talk about it. In his sauna, he talks about a grand social compact through a multilateral process. And I then phoned one of the ministers. I said, we need to meet. And he said, yeah, we need to meet to follow up on the president's sauna. I said, we need to meet on the agreement I've got with the president for bilateral. And we can't get them to focus on it. They're only focused on this social compact that the president announced in sauna, and he now needs to, because 100 days are gone, needs to make some sort of an announcement. And we told him, you can announce what you like, but we are not going to commit to anything under social compact. We're not going to make any commitments that we haven't negotiated, that we haven't agreed on. And if your president announces something that says business has committed to this, so the next day I will go public and say, I don't know what your president is talking about. And if you want to put your president in that sort of situation, go ahead. So we're taking quite a hard line on this. He will make an announcement. There's a framework case. They've agreed they can't announce a social compact, but he wants to announce a framework and a process towards a social compact, which he can do. Like we said, if there are any commitments that we haven't agreed to, they publicly deny that. But I also told the minister that after whatever announcement you make, we want to pick up the bilaterals because that's all we're interested in, right? So I think, and that sort of takes me into the business role. One thing that we're doing is that we had a hard discussion on this, and we've agreed that we need to take a more robust and harder approach towards our engagement with government. Because what's happening very quickly, I think, is that business is being seen to be complicit in what the government is not doing. Okay, because we talk to them all the time. We publicly say we talk to them all the time. We publicly put issues on the table. But nothing's happening, and we say nothing about it. And so business, some CEOs are telling me, but yes, you guys are working with them on this process. So you guys are complicit in this. And I think that's correct. So we taking up harder on. So this thing about we're not going to spend wheel of multilateral. We're not going to agree to any commitments in a social compact. And we'll come out publicly if you guys go elsewhere. And we want to work bilaterally. And we will continue to talk truth to power in a responsible way. And so that's the first thing sort of I want to say. The role of business should be and must continue to be a robust interlocutor with government. And whatever partnerships, whatever working arrangements we have with the government has got to be robust. And we've got to be able to represent our constituency effectively. And we've got to be able to have the space and the wherewithal to actually publicly call government out if they actually do think we haven't agreed. So that's the first part. Then I think that there also needs to be a discussion in business. And I put this to the BUSA board, and they've agreed that we must look at this. Because I think one of the things about the Zondo reports, and I've said this publicly, is that amongst a whole range of other things, it creates an environment where business also has to introspect a little bit, but more than a little. So BUSA has taken the public view that whoever Zondo has mentioned in his report, be it a government department, an individual working for government, or a corporate, and if Zondo says that this corporate should be investigated, and if there's a prima facie case that they were complicit in corruption, they should be charged. We agree with it. So I think that we need to be absolutely clear that business cannot criticize government on corruption if we don't actually get our housing orders. So I think that there's a discussion to be had on how does business do business. And that should also inform the role that business has in helping out. I've just finished reading a book by a lady called Barbara Solomon, who's at Harvard Business School and heads up a unit called Reimagining Capital. It's a fascinating book. That's the title of the book. And she actually talks to how, capitalism is a global economic system, and I keep telling my labor and government colleagues that, we are a small dot on the southern side of the world. We're not going to change the global economic system. So work within it, but work within it in a way that addresses some of our issues. And she talks about how business can do business differently, in a more sustainable way, in a way that treats employees properly, in a way that relates positively to communities in which it works, and that is complementary to profit and shareholder value and stakeholder. And she talks about small and large firms that have gone along this path and are beginning to reap the benefits of financial, bottom line, as well as otherwise. So, I usually quote Ricardo Hausmann, also from Harvard. I had lunch with him a couple of years ago during Zuma's time. I asked him, Ricardo, what do you think is the role of business in this context during Zuma's context? And he said, Cas, you've got to carry on doing what you do. Growing businesses, employing people, paying taxes, all very important. But let me give you an example. And he's originally from Venezuela. And he spoke about the second biggest conglomerate in Venezuela, where on 6 occasions the government tried to nationalize. And on 6 occasions there was a community uprising against such nationalization. And so why? Because that business did its business in a way that contributed to the growth of the country. And those communities knew that if government takes a step out, that growth is gone. And that's the role of business. Not because we're good guys and gals or because of the political imperative or moral imperative, because it's business sustainability. We don't do that in South Africa. In 20 years time, we're not doing business. You don't need research and consultants and all that to tell you. So I think that there is a discussion to be had in business about how we want to do business, and that should inform what role we play in supporting them. So the obvious thing in supporting government, and we talk to them about this all the time, is that given the South African situation currently, the sort of constituency that has the resources and capacity in this. And one of the reasons why I say we need to have this introspection is that if we want to lead in South Africa, we need to have credibility across society. Because then we can lead. We can begin to develop an agenda for investment and growth in this country. So one of the things that we've been talking to government about, we have the capacity, we have the resources. We want to put those to bear to assist government in addressing some of the issues. So we formed something called TAMDEV. I can't remember what the full name is, but it's been managed by the National Business Initiative. And we put together a group, a whole lot of retired people and so on in different areas of expertise. And we made those available to them. And they're doing, some have been deployed in Durban. Some are doing a lot of work in some of the local authorities that want to take in that sort of expertise. We need to sort of put that on supercharge to actually get more people in where they are needed. But there also needs to be a receptivity from government to actually accept this. We're finding that in certain instances, very, very difficult. And the cynic in me tells me, or maybe the realist in me tells me, that if a particular department does not want help to sort out its systems, then it doesn't want its systems to work so that it can continue to do it. And so we point that out to leaders in government when that happens. But that's the obvious sort of one area that business can help and needs help. Then the 2020 and 2021 were classic examples of how business can lead. So during the pandemic, why did we put together Business for South Africa? It was put together by BUSA, because BUSA started getting calls from everyone, including people who are not members of BUSA. What do we do? It became quite clear that business broadly is floundering on how to deal with the pandemic. And so we put together Business for South Africa for a couple of reasons. One, so that it's a platform for all of business to actually interact, not just BUSA members or members, people who belong to other organizations. But also that we wanted to create something that doesn't get caught up into sort of mandating and reporting and all those processes that business organizations have. Because this one, without being too simplistic about it, this was some issue. We needed to manage the pandemic and we needed to distribute vaccines. And if we didn't do that, as a country, people would die. Very simple. It's not complicated what sort of economic form we want and what sort of economic policy that we don't want. So it was quite clear that we needed to harness this and we didn't need to go back on mandates. And we needed to have a project management approach. And so what did we do? At the height of COVID, in 2021, we had probably 450 people, from legal people, health people, people with skills in transport, in communication, project management, behavioral science issues and so on, whole range. 450 people working pro bono for a year. And we had a couple of other firms doing the project management. And we worked with government, with labor and others to actually manage this pandemic. And in last year, when the government started looking at vaccine distribution, it became quite clear that they had no capacity to do this. And by that time, we were winding B4SA down, actually, because we had done what we needed to do to manage the pandemic. We didn't want to be another organization, but there for a particular purpose and to be wound up. And BUSA took the decision after a meeting with the president that we're going to keep B4SA going and help government distribute the vaccine. So at that time, we had about 50 people working on a pro bono basis and working closely with the Department of Health, meeting 3 times a week with the director to manage it. And I can tell you, if we weren't there, vaccine program, wards and all would have been much, much worse. So it's quite clear that there's some very obvious role for business to play. And it's not only now, I mean, just after democracy, through the National Business Initiative, we formed something called the Business Trust. And we raised $1 billion overnight to do tourism stuff and anti-malaria stuff. After Praveen was appointed as Minister of Finance after the weekend minister debacle. And there too, business played a role, and in the sort of role that we need when Sandroyan was appointed. I happened to be on a holiday, and I was traveling with my family through the Karoo to Cape Town. And I was in the vicinity of Karib there. And that day, I took the 19 calls from the meeting. And my wife told me, look, I know you need to do this, but it's a bit crazy. And that night, I got a call from Stephen Coffin. I told my wife, let me put this on speaker because it's going to be nice. and Stephen, excuse the French, and Stephen said, yeah, this is fucking nonsense. We must pull together a delegation. We must go and see the old man, and we must tell him if he doesn't get rid of this guy and put Praveen in, I'll tell him I am taking my money out of the bloody country. Right? And we put a team together. I told Stephen, I'm not coming back. I'll put a team together. And we can see from my we told him, this is what you do, otherwise we all arrange it. No, this isn't a negotiation. This isn't a consultation. And that's what led him to get rid of Sandroyan, Praveen. And when Praveen came in and he met us and he said, look guys, I need your help. And that's when we put together the CEO initiative. And overnight we raised $3.5 billion for the SME work that the CEO initiative started. We formed the Youth Employment Services to look at employment or placing of graduates, and I'm sure some of you might work with that. And so that sort of role business has played and will continue to play, and I think should continue to play. Then I think I talked about the current engagements, and I think that business does need to draw a line in the sand. Not only because we don't want to be compromised, because we know that the only way we're going to make progress is if we convince government to work with us bilaterally on critical priority areas with critical deliverables. We put in the resources and capacity to ensure that those deliverables happen with whatever role government plays. We don't need to shout from the rooftops about it. We can do the work and let government take the credit, but that's the only way it's going to work. But we've got to be absolutely clear with them that we're prepared to do this, provided you work with us bilaterally, and we are not going to waste any time anyway. And tell the president, you've got to bite the bullet, you've got to say you want to do this. So that's what we're talking about at the moment. Then I think to continue to position business in a robust partnership and for truth to power I've talked about. But I think that the other thing, and I'm going to be starting to talk to a whole range of CEOs about this, is that, if we're going to get this right, then this isn't a short project, it's a long project. And business is going to have to put resources behind. Because if I just look at what we've done in the last 2 months to try and get the bilateral going and do the work necessary so that when government is ready to commit to this, we actually get going. I mean, we've had a project management office, we've had at least 3 consultant groups working on some aspects of the growth and investment side, the law and order side, the energy side, infrastructure side, and just what we need to do, how we're going to do it, what the impact would be, and so on. And that's probably cost us the last 2 or 3 months, about 3-4 million. This thing, we're going to have to sing it at least till the end of this year, if not wrong. And we're going to have to fund this to the tune of 20-30 million dollars. And if we're not prepared to do that, then we'll say, well, then what happens. So I'm going to have that hard discussion with them, because we can play the leading role. We can begin to set this agenda. We can begin to drive this and I think make an impact. But we're not going to do that on hot air. And business needs to appreciate it. And just let me finish off by saying that we have a political problem and not an economic problem. Because in the midst of all of this, we need to manage, certainly in our view, we need to manage all of this in a way that ensures that Sir Ramaphosa is re-elected president of the ANC in December. And with all due respect, that's how low the bar is. Cyril hasn't been great. Now, we're certainly not ignoring. But boy, if he's not re-elected and somebody else comes in, then we've jumped, not at the precipice. So that's why it's one of the reasons why it's a political issue, and why politics drives this so significantly now. And the other thing, I mean, we participated and we took the decision to participate in a group called the Defend Our Democracy campaign. Lots of old ANC people, others, other civil society bodies have been looking at how do we protect our constitution, what sort of political system do we need, what sort of electoral system do we need. And they had a major conference a couple of weeks ago. And BUSA, we agreed that we were going to participate. I spoke to it. And Sabisi Jonas, the ex-Deputy Minister of Finance, the keynote address, and he said, we've got to look beyond the ANC. We've got to look at whether we've got an appropriate electoral system to actually hold government to account. Now that's the sort of debate we need to have. I don't think there's a debate anymore that in 2024 the ANC is not going to be the majority party. The question is whether they get 45% or 48%. And what do we do then? Coalition government, ANC and the IBFed, well, that's not right. In the cities where coalition governments, we can't even get meetings together to get guidance. What's going to happen at national level? So, and BUSA has agreed that we need to be party to this discussion. There's got to be a discussion on what do we want to see in 2024. We can't just sit back and say, okay, it's politics, business doesn't get involved in politics. And then try after the election on what's happened. So we do need to, without getting involved in politics, we do need to begin to debate this. We need to begin to talk to people about how they influence this outcome, because it's absolutely in the interest of us on what that outcome is. And that's why this is also a major political issue. So let me stop there.
Cas is very kindly reached out a few questions. I'm just really conscious of your time in there. Yes. We'll take some questions. If you could just stand and announce yourself and the organization you represent. And I'll leave it to you, Cas.
Sure. Aubrey?
My name is Cas Coovadia. I'm not representing any company. I'm an ex-Bombardier now, the transportation side. But Cas, I agree substantially with what you said. And towards the end of your input, I thought, we could almost completely agree. But you've got the ANC and the DA that are the two big parties in South Africa. I mean, surely instead of the ANC or the DA looking at some small minority parties, is this not an area for business in looking at scenarios to say that, look, guys, we either lose a country or you're going to have to cooperate and work together. And I think it paves the way for that future you outlined. And just last, I mean, you spoke about Thabo Mbeki and some of the things he's done well, and yes, there's errors. But you know, something that's so obvious is that Thabo Mbeki appointed DGs, I think, Director Generals, and with Cyril Ramaphosa, what we have seen is that politicians, you know, his cabinet was given, or he ceded that right. I mean, that clearly, I think, is one of the reasons for this ongoing crisis, because I think for DGs, I don't know what they face every day with different cabinet members having different agendas and so on. And how BUSA, you know, how it frustrates BUSA in terms of getting meaningful outcomes. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean the DANC sort of alliance is the most obvious route to go, I guess. But it's all ideologically based, right? They just want both on both sides. They just consolidate each other to be on. That's all. And they won't talk to each other. And it's this is where I think business needs to play a role. And I think behind the scenes, business needs to start talking and saying, guys, you're gonna need, this whole system is gonna need financial support toward the 2024 elections. Well, this is what we want to support. Get that together. And so I know some business in some parts of the country are looking at talking to some people for looking at new formation and so on. That could be one way to go, talking to people across party political lines, but not the ANC, unfortunately. That could be a way to go, but I mean, the most appropriate thing would be an ANC-DA get together. And we've got to put the country first, and we've got to go beyond this ideological baggage. And I think business definitely has a role to play behind the scenes on that. On DG and so on, I think one of the problems, and the president, when we meet with him, just very that violence, would tell us that I have a cabinet that's divided ideologically and in another way, then I can't pull them together. And again, 2 years ago or 3 years ago at a meeting when before Stephen retired, or retired as CEO of the West, he told the president, well, who appoints this? I do. And you can bloody fire them. That's your prerogative. If I have an executive that's not behind me, I get tell them to go to hell. So don't sit here and try about it. Fire them and put in people who can do the job. But obviously, it's easier said than done politically, right? But the bottom line is rather than have a cabinet, that's why you get all sorts of different voices coming from government. You know, on virtually everything, because he has a divided cabinet and he just doesn't have the gumption to pull them together and kick some butt. But I agree with you.
Great.
Great assumption from Hatch Africa. It's one of the questions I asked you online on one of the online sessions. You guys are meeting with the president. When does the finance minister meet with CFOs of business? And how can that get driven in? Just to get a different perspective, a different aim on things.
Yeah. So look, I think the current finance minister is thinking right. I think he's on the same page as us. And maybe that's something that we should pull together. I mean, even in this talks on the social compact thing, and so myself, Martin Kingston, and Adrian go on business, and Enoch, Ibrahim Patel, and Chulas, the Minister of Labour from Durban, have been talking about this. We put the three aside together. And that's where we've been trying to drive the bilateral to get them to comment. But we talk, and then Enoch would call me or Martin afterwards and say, you know what, guys, I'm not on the same page at the moment. The social compact nonsense, it's nonsense. Just another way of kicking the can down the road and not taking decisions. And in not saying, we all know, I know my colleagues know, and I know you guys know, that there's at least 50 mining exploration licenses that are stuck in the system. Let's just agree that within the next month we unblock those and we'll have a phenomenal amount of investment coming. That's what we should be doing. So he's in that sort of position. But he won't say that in front of his colleagues. And we try to work with him to see how we can help him unlock some of this stuff. But the other problem is that, I mean, Treasury has been gutted as well. And I think they're sitting at the moment with 43 municipalities that they're administering. They don't have time for much else, to be quite honest. And he said, I've got fire burning at home that I've got to put together. So I really don't have time for this sort of nonsense discussion. So he's sort of between a rock and a hard place. I mean, to put out the fire in Treasury, his DG has just gone, acting DG now, smile. But I think it's something that I'll follow up. I think it would be a good idea to get him to meet with the CFO for some.
Thank you for that undertaking. Yes, any further questions? Perhaps 2 or 3 questions.
Yes, thank you very much. It was enlightening. From our perspective, in our business, from your way of sitting from the banking perspective, the impact of FATF and probably credit and what's that going to do to business and industry as a whole?
Yeah, so I'm not in banking anymore. But it's something that we've discussed broadly. I mean, again, so the Reserve Bank has done everything it needs to do, right? Speaking to researcher, it's quite clear. But she said, yes, I'm not sure FATF about what we're doing on corruption and how we manage it. And we put this to the president. I mean, the Minister of Finance was also implored the president to actually do something about it. They say they're working on it and they're talking to FATF. But so the Banking Association is dealing with this more in detail in BUSA. And they are talking to relevant people in government. But if we get rails, I mean, the impact will be severe. When I was at BASA, I know that I used to send somebody to the FATF meeting that we used to engage with government regularly to ensure that we don't get problematic. We came pretty close when certain authors were trying to delay the adoption of the financial settlement, FICBO, in Parliament. I remember representing BASA there, and Jimmy Manyi was talking against it, and John Manyi was talking against it. And we know why. And we came pretty close. But we convinced a portfolio committee that don't talk about unintended consequences. You don't take the right decision, because I'm telling you now what those consequences will be. So if you take the wrong decision, they bloody well intended consequences. And they took the right decision and they ensured that we went through. So we are talking to them. We get the assurances that they assure in FATF, but yeah, in fact, will be severe. But it's a topic sure.
Question there. We will take one more after that. Please back. There will be a networking opportunity. Please join us for some refreshments and snacks outside, courtesy of Bright, and you will have a further opportunity. There will also be a photo op for 10 minutes. So if you want a photo with Cas, I'm sure we'll arrange that.
That needs to look after your reputation.
I'll look after you. I will do it.
Hi, there's a money around people of the WSP in Africa. One of my previous program roles was president of the Water Institute of South Africa, and there's been huge amounts of efforts through BUSA, CISA, and that in order to look at infrastructure, get to government, and it's all falling in their areas. So when you talk about the proud legacy we have in water in this country, talk about Mike Miller and all those, I mean, we have a huge, great army of people that I know we can mobilize to actually volunteer. That we've got to so far and to stop, and business has that opportunity to help. But as you said, the line has been broad and we want to walk away from it.
Yeah, no, and that's why I said there needs to be a receptivity for the capacity, right? So I mean, I read was, I don't know, frustration, and I was absolutely perplexed at what I read yesterday, that Praveen is appealing to solidarity for support and for capacity. We've been offering them capacity for the last 4 years. There's almost a thing that we can't be seen to be getting capacity from business. And it's because they need labor's support for the votes. Cyril, you're worried that if he goes to the conference being branded a business lackey, he might not get the votes. And it's all those sorts of things that's driving. And we keep telling them, guys, let's get into dark rooms somewhere and structure this in a way that nobody needs to know where the capacity is coming from. We don't want the curious ones. But it's just crazy. It's a mindset issue at the moment, and that's what we're fighting. So yeah, and we'll keep on pushing on this. I mean, but the thing is that, and this is why we're so keen on these bilaterals, because the moment we raise the issues with labor and community groups and others sitting around the table, oh no, you guys want to capture the state again. Why do you guys think you guys have the capacity? Look at the mess up you guys made. And then we get involved in that sort of discussion. And government becomes defensive. And that's why if we have the bilaterals, then we can talk about how we structure these things, knock head on some of the tough issues, and get it moving. And so hopefully, I mean, we were expecting the President to make an announcement on the energy thing about a week ago. We told maybe in the next few days, he'll probably make an announcement on the social compact thing by August or something. And then hopefully we can get the bilaterals, get some progress. But sure.
Thanks for that comprehensive response. Thank you, Cas. I'd like, just as we come to the end, we run on spot on time. I'd like to call on Craig Sumption of Patch, just for some concluding remarks and a vote of thanks. Thank you, Craig.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks to you and your team for all that you do to organise these functions, and Edwin for hosting us here. And Cas, thank you. No doubt that is a tricky, complex topic, and it's one that is grappled by many people at the moment. And I think your insights were really good to hear. Thank you for that. Just some of those conversations you've been having, some of the outputs that you did finally get from them. Not all of them will result in outputs. That's life, we know that. But I think just to hear that it has been pushed back from business in that area, and there were specific changes that were made is good to hear. And also very good to hear that there's a hard line being taken with government to try and force and make some of these things happen. So I think that's very good. I think we've got people in the room who are still committed to the country, and that's why we are all still here. And in addition, the Canadian High Commissioner's Office supporting what is happening in the country. So there is still good work that can be done, and I think we wish you the best in all your endeavours to keep making some of these things happen, and moving all of that forward to try and get to the right outcome. So thank you very much for your time and for your insights.
If you go out the door, just turn right. Please come and join us with the
Yeah.